picture you're seeing there is a floating turbine. So that turbine is not actually, that long tube that's coming off the base of that turbine is not actually anchored into the ground. The anchor wires are coming from the sides, and this is probably the type of thing we're going to see in the future when it comes to large offshore wind farms in deep waters. What we're also looking at is trying to minimise losses. An awful lot of losses happen in AC systems, so there's an awful lot of effort and money being spent on DC technology, HVDC arrays, and also interconnection, also in the turbines themselves. Wind arrays, we find that the larger the turbine array, so say you have 200 turbines in an array, what's actually happening, the turbines in the centre are not getting as much wind as you might expect as the ones along the outside, and it's actually it's part of where we need to spend an awful lot of time trying to understand, do we need to change the shape of the blades, do we need to change the type of technology, the spacing, whatever, in order to try to maximise the wind that's being captured by the central turbines. Constraints and curtailment, we find that when we're looking at the existing turbines we have in operation today, some of them are not operating as we might expect, and when we look at that we find some of the issues around power curve, which is how the energy output at different wind speeds. And some of it we're finding then is the operation of the turbines in certain turbulence conditions. Also maybe we've underestimated losses on sites in certain instances. So we're finding that there are a lot of different issues around simply understanding how to maximise what's coming off your wind farm. We also find that the grid puts constraints on us at times as far as the amount that we can export from our wind farms. Radars become a big issue, primary and secondary radar concerns in some of our wind farms in the UK in particular. And then resonance is something you see on wind farms that are on the back end of a long, say, underground connection to a substation. Reliability, needless to say, when you look at, say, take a look at some of those pictures there, you've got helicopter access, you've got vessels and ships or whatever required to get out to these turbines. All of this is extremely expensive, so it's very, very important that turbines are built high quality, that they have high availability, but that they're designed for offshore. So getting an onshore turbine and simply putting that offshore is not a solution. These turbines are required to be designed for offshore. Condition monitoring is where you look at the equipment, the gearboxes and the generators, and you take a signature of the normal operation of the equipment, and then you manage, you continuously download information about the operation of those gearboxes, say, and then you are able to detect whether something is going awry and get in there and then try to take action earlier rather than later, before you wait for a failure. Easy access is a massive thing. Like I was saying earlier about health safety and just transfer. It's an extremely big issue, just being able to access the turbines. Refurbishment of components, of subcomponents, I think is going to be something that has a real opportunity for the likes of Ireland. I don't think that we're going to be spending a whole lot of time building new turbines in this country. I don't think the turbine supplier is going to come here. But what you find after, when you buy a turbine, you get a 5-year warranty with it, or 2 years, depending on what you want to take. But regardless, after a period of time, you're on your own as far as getting those, keeping those turbines operating. Now, there's a huge opportunity, whether it's in Ireland, the UK, Europe, for companies to start growing up, to start to take these components and start to rework them, and not just depend strictly on the original equipment manufacturers to do this work. The next thing then is integration of high volumes of wind. The graph on the top right there is just looking at, this came from one of our wind farms from Metmass over many years, and you can see that the wind on a yearly basis can vary quite a lot from year to year. So yes, it varies day to day, week to week, even year to year, though the total quantity of wind that can come off a wind farm can vary quite considerably. And then if you look at the graph below, the second part of it there, The green is again just showing wind in the early part of say January, and then you've got lesser wind, say in the latter part. And then the impact that that's having is shown on the third part of the graph. Basically, when the wind is blowing a lot, other plant is not on the system. Where the wind is not blowing, other plant has to come onto the system. So you find that we need to have a lot of plant that's able to react quickly, other plant that's able to react quickly. Or we need to have other options. For example, interconnection is one of those possible options. Using the grid very smartly, using smart meters, and then also managing the demand side is going to be very important in the future. And then storage and the likes of electric vehicles and how that can all play in. I think there really is quite a role in there. This is just one graph that's showing you a potential wind management scenario. Again, the blue line is showing high wind generation, and the black line is showing load. So you can see that there's a mismatch. This is like looking at, say, 2020 or thereabouts, when we have a lot of wind on the system. You could end up with a situation where you have higher wind being generated than the load requires. So what you do, one of the options would be just curtail the wind farms back. Another option is you use the system and you actually divert that extra energy into the likes of electric vehicles, so that they're waiting and they can only charge. For example, you could have it that they are plugged in to wait until such time as we have an abundance of renewable energy, and then that pumps into charging of the electric vehicles at the appropriate time, and not just being, say, done sitting on the system. There's also a scenario that's been looked at the moment, and the car manufacturers are working towards this, which is not just where we charge the batteries off the system, but where those batteries can then in the future also be used as storage, so that when the grid then requires it, it can go in and call off those batteries and actually use them to support the grid. So, in conclusion, where should Ireland focus? There's an awful lot happening. An awful lot's going to be done on turbine technology and foundation technology, all of these different things. But I actually think an awful lot that will be done between the major turbine suppliers and major customers. And that's going to be happening really in the UK and in Europe. There's a small chance that the likes of Arctic could be used as a test site for new technologies, but that's only, maybe through the likes of SSE, actually, because SSE is a major customer, being able to lever the suppliers to actually put their new technologies into Arctic. Deep offshore arrays are going to occur in the Irish Sea and in the North Sea. Again, expertise in how to do all of that will lie, I think, with the major UK and European utilities, and the likes of some of these major countries have a lot of the port facilities, etc., that are needed, and a lot of the expertise. But I think there is a huge opportunity for Ireland, say, post-warranty, for servicing of offshore equipment. And that can be done from the east coast of Ireland, and it doesn't require the same scale of investment or the same scale of equipment that's required in order to do the initial installations. Again, just component refurbishment, quick and easy access solutions, speed, all that type of thing is going to be something I think that we should be able to do. Then Ireland at the forefront of integrating large volumes of wind. We are at the forefront of this at the moment. We are a small isolated system. We don't have a lot of interconnection at the moment. Yes, the Moyle, and yes, there's another interconnector being built, but even still, we're not going to have massive interconnection that we see in some of the other countries. And we still don't have a very strong grid system. So there's no reason why Ireland should not be at the forefront of understanding how to integrate wind and develop a broad system approach, including the likes of demand side management, smart grid, smart meter, storage, electric vehicles, how all this doesn't work. There's no reason at all why we can't be at the forefront of that. In fact, we should be at the forefront of it. And then there's a lot in turbine performance that's unknown yet. It hasn't been fully investigated. It's starting to come to the forefront. Again, it doesn't take huge amounts of capital investment. It just requires people learning and understanding and investigating.